welcome to my first ever tutorial. Today I'm going to be helping you install and use CleanFlight enabled devices such as the NAZE32, CC3D, and the SP Racing board on an airplane. Now I know there is a decent amount of information out there about this, but honestly I want to go a little bit more in depth into servo mixing and motor mixing, help you set up differential thrust, and add other features such as, let's say, pan to your yaw if you're using something like a wing where it's just sitting there doing nothing anyways. So let's get started with it. Okay, so we're going to start off with a clean installation. So basically this is, well, apparently we're running an old version. So what we're going to do is we're going to flash this quickly. So I'm going to disconnect, go to firmware flasher, full chip erase, make sure that we select NAZE32. There it is, February 20th of the 2016 is the last one that was produced. Let's load that firmware. Yada yada yada, gives you a whole bunch of information on the current firmware, and we're going to flash. Oops, I'm not sure what happened there. Let's try that again. In fact, I actually find that happens quite a bit. Not sure why, but usually hitting the flash button a second time seems to go through. Okay, so we are running the latest version of firmware of the CleanFlight firmware. That's 1.12, at least the latest version of when this video was created. Let's connect and continue. Okay, so as you'll notice up at the top that this is a full NAZE32. Also has a data flash chip, which is of course part of the full version. 2 meg on board. The SP Racing Pro boards now have an 8 meg on board. Nice little extra. Plus they also have pins for all 8. But we're using this on a plane today, so we really don't need that many outputs. First thing I'm going to start off with is I do have GPS plugged into this. So we're going to go to ports, and we're going to enable GPS. And I'm running my GPS at 57600, so we're going to leave that there. Save, reboot. It's going to take us back to configuration once it's done. Or not. Okay, so it left us here. Now if we go to configuration, first thing of all, I'm using PPM. So in fact, I'm actually using a X8R on this, which provides an S-Bus output, but you can buy S-Bus to CPPM adapters, and they work quite well. So I'm going to enable CPPM, enable GPS, and I'm using a U-Blocks unit. So let's make sure we select that. And where I'm located, we're running a declination of -9. Okay, I'm going to save and reboot. And we're back in. Okay, so first thing I'm going to recommend to anybody is enable motor stop. Great little feature for airplanes, especially if you're using a hand launch unit. Last thing you want is to be juggling your airplane and your transmitter and trying to arm, and all of a sudden the prop catches up and tries to run off on you. And it's just, motor stop's a nice feature. I mean, you don't have to have it, but I prefer to have it. Last thing you need is to have that thing kind of jolt out of your hand when you're only just barely holding on to it in the first place. Disarm motors regardless of throttle value. We'll allow that. And disarm motors after delay. Now, airplanes have a unique ability to glide over top of things like multirotors. So if you have a light plane that tends to glide a lot, set this pretty high. For me, I'm going to set this for about 60 seconds. I'm usually not gliding for more than that. Actually, to be safe, let's put it for 120. Alright, and we will save that. Okay, so the rest of these features, you have VBAT, make sure that that's set up properly. It's a great thing to have. I currently don't have a current meter on this one. Cycle loop time's fine there. Out of these guys, I'm going to use Blackbox. That's a nice feature. Lets me know how if my plane's heavy to one side than the other, things like that, or how it's compensating. Channel forwarding, I don't use this because quite simply I program everything through the CLI anyway, and I'm going to show you how to do that. This is all part of the servo mixing. Sonar, I would really like to see this work on a plane, ground avoidance, but I mean it might be asking a bit much. Race transponder, another feature if you're putting together, let's say, racing wing or something along that lines. Soft serial, if you don't have enough outputs, I usually have this enabled, especially when I'm running a S-bus inverter, which basically takes an S-bus signal and sends it into one of your UARTs. This still allows me to run my MinimOSD, GPS, and other features that I'm running, but I'm not going to use it at this point. And okay, so that's pretty much it for this page. I'm going to save and reboot. Okay, and one last thing that you have to remember is your board alignment. There is an arrow on your flight controller that'll point towards the front, but should you be in a position where you can't access the USB and need to rotate your board, just make sure that you set up your yaw to match that. So it could be negative 90, 90, 180, anything like that, but just make sure that this matches and then save and reboot. If you don't, in a quad, this is disastrous. On a plane, you're just going to get some pretty funky things happening to you. So make sure that's set, and we'll continue on. Next thing to cover is going to be the black box, because I have enabled it. Now remember, if this doesn't give you a data flash size up here, you won't be able to use it. This is only available on the full versions of the NAS32. Also, the Flip 32s are available on that as well. Now you're going to want to set this to onboard data chip, and yeah, 1.1's good enough. It's only going to produce a short amount of data, but that's fine. Okay, so we are set up. PID tuning. Okay, PID tuning on a plane. It's not as sensitive, but you're going to want to play with this a bit. First of all, your roll and pitch. To start off with, I find for, say, for example, the fixed wing I'm flying, 3 to 3.5 is generally a good start. I'm going to say 6 for that. I'm going to leave these other two alone for now. Now, I'm going to be running Bluetooth so that I can adjust this later when I'm out in the field, but we're just going to set that for now. Okay, let's head on over to the receiver section. Here, you are going to want to, for a plane, at least a fixed wing, for example, you're going to want to set one of your channels up to one of your dials. And this is to basically put a bit of pre-assigned pitch. This way, when you're out and you need, let's say you're out cruising around and you're realizing that your wing is diving or pulling up on you when you're just cruising, you're going to want to have something to kind of trim that out. Now, normally you can trim that out with the sticks themselves, but personally, I like to have a channel to actually do that for me. So I'm going to set it up to auxiliary 3, which is one of my dials. And so that's pretty good. Now I have auxiliary 5 set up to my 3-position switch. And this is my holy crap switch. And yes, I've set up a holy crap switch to auxiliary 2, which is actually just my training switch. This way I can set this up so that if I do find myself in trouble, this will allow me to right the plane. Not something I normally need to use, but you never know. This is also my failsafe channel, back before the new settings, but I'll show you more of that in the future. Okay, on to the Droid CLI. Now, the great thing about the command line interface is not only does it give you access to variables and commands that are already available through the GUI, but it'll allow you to access many that are not. The folks at CleanFlight have actually done a pretty good job of now making the GUI almost up to date with everything that is available in the background. But most of the hard work is still actually done back here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set the mixer to the available mode that you want. So for example, if you go to the configuration tab, the mixers that are available to you are these ones listed here. You can select custom plane from here, and then if you click save and reboot. But what we're going to do is we're just going to do it under the CLI. I like to do a lot of my settings here as well, actually what I'm going to be doing is producing a script later on that does all these settings for me. So next time I set up a wing, or should I need to reset this board, or after a firmware update, let's say they come out with a fantastic return to home now for CleanFlight, then I can redo my setup very quickly from here. So I'm actually going to take you through that part first, in fact. So, all right, so I've opened up Notepad. I'll show you how this works very nicely. So first of all, we're going to need to know what commands to use. So if you type in mixer, that's going to bring up the current mix, and that's a quad X. Now what we're going to want, for you to make any changes and do your own custom mixing, you're going to need to actually select one of the custom profiles. So to get a list of the available profiles, just simply type in mixer space list. Okay, so that's going to bring up a whole series of profiles that are available to you. The one that we really want is custom plane. So to set that, type in mixer custom air plane. There you go. Now, adding settings to the CLI will be lost if you leave the CLI if you don't remember to save. So after you do any significant changes, simply type in save, press enter, and the system's going to reboot. So now back to the CLI. Now remember that notepad. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to type in mixer custom air plane. There. Next time I need to use this, it is available. Now another thing, whenever you're doing anything inside of the CLI, you can actually add comments. So what we're going to do is we're going to produce a large-scale script that will set up all of our settings for us. And you'll actually see how this will come in handy again if you want to change several things. But for ease of use, let's add some comments. So the first one we're going to add is setup custom plane mixer. I mean, it was pretty much self-explanatory anyway, but the comments do help. So, and I'm going to skip a few lines, and I'm going to type in save, and I'm going to save this. And we're going to call this my wing CLI. This way I can open it up, edit it, and use it again later. Now, as you type in things here, you can simply select all, copy, and paste here. And if you use your up and down arrow keys, you'll actually see that. There you go. So now if we press enter, commands are entered into the system, and it reboots. Now if we go to configuration, there it is, custom airplane. Okay, so the first thing that we're actually going to tackle is the motor mixing. Now motor mixing is actually quite simple. To bring up a list of your current mixes, simply type in MMIX. So right now you'll see we actually have nothing listed under motor mixing. That's fine. We're going to add this ourselves. So I'm going to go back to that script, and I'm going to add mixing motors. Okay, to do anything with motor mixing, you'll need the MMIX command. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create just a list of what my titles are. So copy those, head back to my notepad. There, I now have those for referencing. So the way this works is, the big thing with the CLI is everything starts with 0. On your flight controller, you'll notice that your pins start from 1 to 6. If you have a NACE, if you have the SP, they go 1 to 8. In the CLI, though, it's 0 to 5. So if you're talking about pin 1 on the flight controller, you'll be talking about pin 0 inside the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to first select the pin. So we want pin 0 to be our, first you have to add the MMIX command to anything. So MMIX 0 for pin 1. Now, you'll notice the next variable is our throttle. And what this will do is it takes the command from the throttle and adds it to the motor. So what we're going to do is, and this is done in ratio, not percentage, ratio. So we're going to do 1. And what that'll do is, that's almost like saying 100%. Ratio is just basically whatever divided by 100. So if I wanted, let's say, 50% of the throttle input to go to the motor, I would put 0.5. I'll show you how this actually works in, let's say, if you have a 2-motor plane and you want to do differential thrust. I'll show you how you can do that here. But we're going to do a ratio of 1 for thrust, 0 for roll, 0 for pitch. In fact, actually, I'm going to show you right now how you can do differential thrust. So yaw input. To yaw plane using the motors, you would slow down one motor and speed up the other. When you're using yaw on the sticks, when you move the stick to the left, it provides a negative input. When you move the stick to the right, it provides a positive input. Now, these are multiples of that input. So let's say we want to add 30% of the movement on the stick to the motor, because we don't want it just to suddenly double in speed. We want it to increase in speed, and we're going to want the second motor to subtract. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 30% by doing 0.3. Now what this would do is when I give it yaw, it's going to multiply it's going to use the full amount of the throttle, and then it's going to add an additional 30% depending on the yaw, up to 100%. It won't go past 100% on the motor. So for the second motor, I'm going to MMIX. I'm going to have the second motor plugged into pin 2, which will come up as pin 1 according to the CLI. I'm going to run full on for the throttle. Negative 0.3 to the yaw. And what this will do is, this will, when I provide a positive input, so let's say motor 1 is on the left and motor 2 is on the right. Motor 0 is on the left, motor 1 is on the right. You got to get used to that, but that's okay. When I provide positive, motor on the left, which is moving the stick to the right, motor on the left will speed up 30%, and motor on the right will slow down 30%, and that'll cause the plane to pull towards the right. If I was to provide negative, then what it will do is it will produce negative times 30%, so it'll be negative 30% now on the left motor, and positive, because 2 wrongs make a right here, on the right motor. Oops, that would be my transmitter. Let's shut that down. Okay. And that's how you basically do differential thrust. It's not that hard. Everything's set up here. And you'll notice that you'll never have to worry about negative on the motors, because your throttle only goes from 0, which is down at the bottom, to positive. In the event that you do have let's say a 2-way motor and you want to do 3D flying, mostly with quadcopters and tricopters, you'll actually be using, instead of a standard throttle gimbal, you'll be in the center, and then you'll have positive and negative throttle. And for that, you would want a controller that basically has the same gimbal on both sides, so centering gimbals on both sides. But once again, this is for airplanes. Now, I'm running a fixed wing. So I actually, I'm running a wing. So I actually don't need these. I'm only running a single motor. So let's say I want to maybe use these later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out the 2 of them, and I'm going to add the one I actually want to use. And I want no yaw control on this. I just want to add throttle, and I want it to go. Now, the MMIX does not have a remove or delete command. So let's say you had 2 motors in the system and you want to apply. What you want to do is, instead of removing an entry, you're going to want to actually remove all the entries and re-add them. And that's where scripts come in handy. So I'm going to add MMIX and reset first. What that will do is that will clear out any of the settings and add my 1 motor. And that's pretty much it. So let's copy this script. Now I know I'm going to keep adding the top parts and all that over and over again, but it won't hurt the system. And save. That's it. and there's the motor that we want on pin 0, which is actually pin 1 on the flight controller. Okay, let's move on to the fun part, servo mixing. So most quadcopters don't use servos. Actually, a couple of mine do, but we won't need that. Once again, this is for planes. Servo mixing is a little bit more difficult than motor mixing. Uses a similar command, so let's type in SMIX to get a series of current servos, and you'll see that there are currently nothing here. Now, where motors you would pick the pin and apply which input you wanted, here you're actually going to create a rule. Now, the benefit of rules is you can apply multiple inputs to the same servo. So in my situation here, I'm setting this up for a wing. I can provide pitch and roll input to both of the servos as I need them. Now I'm also going to add in, like I said earlier, I select auxiliary 3 to be my predefined pitch. So let's go in and we're going to add that. Now I'm actually going to start with the predefined pitch. So to add a rule, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our script. So I'm going to copy this, head back to our script, and you know what, just for benefit to make things easier to read, there we go. And I'm going to type in servo mixing. Now, once again, there isn't a remove or delete command for servo, so what I'm going to type in is SMIX reset, and that's just going to clear out the whole set so that we can start over. I'm going to add these in here as well. There, and that'll give us something to reference when we're actually doing this. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to add, let's say for the first rule, SMIX, of course. Now, we're going to add rule 0. Remember, everything starts from 0. Okay, the first thing we want to select is the servo. Now, servos are much like the motors. This is the output pin starting from 0. So I'm going to plug my motors into, let's say we're going to use 5 and 6. Normally it's 3 and 4, but for the benefit of this, I'm going to use 5 and 6. So this would be servo 4. Source, now this is different. Before, with the motors, you would select your input. Now you're actually going to have to go to a website and get an input ID. And I will put the description to this website, or the address to this website in the description. But what you're going to want to do is go here, scroll down until you get to custom servo mixing, and you're going to want your input sources. So now I set predefined mix up with auxiliary 3. So here's auxiliary 3, and the source ID is 10. So I'm going to copy that, head back on over to my, well, let's go to the CLI first and then back to the script. Okay, so input source is going to be 10. I probably could have remembered that and wrote it down, but it's there anyway. Okay, next is your rate. Now this is very much like the rate on your transmitter. 0 to 100, if you apply a 50 rate, then it'll produce 50% of whatever you apply to that stick. So since I'm using auxiliary 10, which is, or sorry, input 10, which is auxiliary 3, if I was to move the dial 50%, it would move 25% if it was on 50%, but I'm just going to set this to 100. Okay, speed. Now, this normally would come to play if you're using something like a gimbal, or let's say you're using a gas or a nitro motor on your plane. You don't necessarily always want because you're using a servo to actually control the throttle, you don't want it to just suddenly snap when you move the stick. You want to hit your throttle and it will, at its set speed, accelerate. This is where you would actually put in that speed by giving it just, like a variable of 5, 10, 20. But we don't want to use that. We want the control surface to move as fast as we give it input on this. So if you zero out the speed, it'll ignore any speed algorithm and just go to exactly where you put it as quickly as it can. Next is your min and your max, and these are your software limits. You may not be able to throw an elevator or a rudder at the full depth of what the servo itself could do. This would be more particularly used, once again, in that throttle or in that gimbal. Let's say your camera only will pitch up maybe halfway up before it maybe will hit the frame. Here you would actually enter in where that limit would be, and that limit would be the full throw, 0 to 100. So let's say you can only go halfway up. So from the center point halfway up, you would set that to a maximum, because that would be the servo would be moving in the positive direction. You would set that to a maximum of 75, which is, because you start off at 50 anyway, you want half of 50, so that's 25% from the top, so 75 would be your top end. I have no obstructions. My wing can go, my elevons can go full distance here, so I'm going to just put 0 for minimum and 100 for maximum, and we're going to zero out the box value. Okay, so that is my left servo. Now we're also going to have to, because this is an elevon system, you may also have this if you have, let's say, flaps. I'm going to need to now adjust the other servos similarly. So SMIX, this is going to be rule number 1. Now remember, this is going to be servo on pin 6, so this will be servo output 5. 10 is the input source for auxiliary 3. Now here's the problem. Both my servos are pointing in the same direction, and the servo horns are pointing now opposite direction to each other. One is pointing out towards the left of the plane, one is pointing out to the right of the plane. If I was to give them both positive input, they would both turn clockwise, which would push the elevator to the back on the left side and pull the elevator up on the right side. We don't want to do that. We want them to both mirror each other. So I'm going to have to reduce a opposite rate to this. And to do that, you just simply type in negative 100, and that will have the servo now move in the opposite direction, so negative 100% to what my input is. 0 out the speed, 0 is my minimum, 100 is my maximum, 0 out the box. So now I can copy the whole script, paste it in, and press enter. And because save was the last command, the system is automatically going to save and take us back. Now here I can just type in SMIX again and get a list of my mixes. And there are my 2 mixes. Okay? Okay, so now that we have the pre-pitch defined, we're going to need to actually take input from the radio and apply pitch to it. So we're going to start off, of course, with pitch. So let's head back on over. And to save myself a little bit of time, in fact, what I'm going to do is let's predefined pitch input pitch. Now I like the way these move, so I'm going to copy those, and now I make sure that your rules are numbered properly. So 0, 1, oops, 2, and 3. So I have 4 rules going from 0 to 3, the same servos, but my inputs are going to be different. So let's head back on over to that chart. Okay, now this is where it gets a little interesting. Now the reason why they did IDs is because you have your inputs as an RC roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle, but you also have your inputs that run through the computer's whatever algorithm it's set up for whatever mode you're in. So for this, you have your stabilized roll, stabilized pitch, stabilized yaw, stabilized throttle, which means the system is going to automatically produce stability as the gyro and accelerometer receive input. So they'll run it through the algorithm, and the system will produce a stabilized output. Now, this would also work in the event that you're in, let's say, angle mode or any other mode. So if you don't want any of those features, you can always select the RC roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle. But because we're using the plane, there's a mode called pass-through, which would automatically convert those inputs into your direct inputs anyway. So I always recommend to select the stabilized roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle. So the ID we're going to use for pitch is 1. So let's change that over to 1 and 1. Okay, so what that's going to do is it's going to take the stabilized input and apply it to those servos in the positive and negative. Now, you may want to actually add pitch, or sorry, you may want to actually reduce the rate depending on how sensitive your plane is and how big your surface areas are. For me, I like to be able to flip and roll this thing at will. So what I do is I set up high expo and I keep high rates. So this way I can still fly quite sensitively and small increments near the center of the stick. But when I want to flip this thing around, I want to get those surfaces moving as far and as fast as they can. So I leave those rates right at the 100%. I also want them to affect, one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative, as when I pitch up or pitch down, the elevons are going to both move up and both move down. So next on our list is going to be roll. So I'm lazy, so I'm going to save myself a little bit of typing again. And there we are. Make sure those rules, there we go. So I'm now at 6 rules. Same 2 servos, because this is all done with elevons. But now we want that roll input. And that is 0. So let's change that to 0. Now, with roll, you want one elevator to go, or elevon to go up, and you want one elevon to go down. So by doing that, we want them both to receive 100%. This way, they're both going to go clockwise, or they're both going to go counterclockwise, and because they're facing out the opposite direction, means one's going to push, one's going to pull. Now, the big thing is where I have my positive and negative rates, they might be wrong. I'm just setting them up here, but I'm not going to sit there and go, okay, this is a counterclockwise servo on input, and this one's a counterclockwise servo on input. All I'm going to do is I'm going to set them up here, and this is the great thing about having the script, is once you go over and test it, you can just go through here, flip over your positives and negatives, and basically reverse your servos. So this right here would pretty much get us flying. So I'm going to save that, copy it. So now if we didn't do anything, let's say this was a freshly set up flight controller, all I would do is copy everything out of here, paste it in there, and press enter. There are all my rules. And I think I saw a couple rules. So let's head back over. SMIX. Oh, no, rules are right. Servos are right. Sources are right. And my rates are right. Okay. So that would pretty much be, that would get you up and flying. Now, this is an FPV wing. So what I like to do is I have a yaw command, because it's bank and yank. I have that yaw command just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. I have a camera. I have an extra input that's right there readily available. So why not take a servo and mount our camera to the top of that servo? So what I'm going to do is I'm not using, okay, so this is set up for 4 and 5, which are pins 5 and 6 on the output. I'm going to take pin 3, and I'm going to add that for a pan. So let's add another rule. So let's go pan from yaw. So SMIX, this is going to be rule number 6. This is going to be servo, now this will be servo number 3, which is actually pin output 4, since we're using 5 and 6 for the other 2 for the elevons. Now the source, I have a few options here. Now this isn't a gimbal style system, so we're not going to be, basically when we want to turn, we want the camera to turn. This is our flight camera. The question that we might want is, do we want stabilized yaw, or do we want RC yaw? So basically, in a wing configuration, you don't want to be turning and then have the camera turning back the other direction. It's not going to turn very far. Stabilization won't do that. But you know what? Honestly, I think we're going to want the camera to be pretty rigid. We just want to have the ability to actually look left and right. So the RC input we're going to use is going to be 6. This way there are absolutely no effects. It's going to take the yaw as we give it. And if we don't give it yaw, it's going to be pointing forward. So let's do input ID 6. Flip back on over to our script. So we're going to use source is 6. Let's do 100%. Now remember, I may have to go in here and make this negative 100%. Let's do full speed. Sure, if I want to look to the right real quick and back to center, I want it to do it quickly. No obstructions. I'm going to have full rotation as I need it, and 0 out the box. So now what we've done is we've actually used that extra output. We have 3 servos, 1 motor. I'd say that's probably pretty good. So I'm going to save this. So just Control S. I'm going to copy the whole thing. Control C to copy. Down here, Control V. And this would, so like I said, if there was absolutely nothing in there, this would set up our motors. So, so it would set up our motors. It would set up our mixer selection itself. Remember, you have to enter into a custom mixer first before you do anything. And then it would set up our servos. So that's pretty much it. I'm running pretty much everything else on this, so I had the GPS and everything else set up. I'm inside, so it's not going to exactly get a fix. Blackbox is set up. Okay, for the last part of this, before we go into actual testing, let's check out our modes that are available for the plane. Okay, so I'm going to take my receiver. I'm going to fire this thing on up.
Welcome to the Turnigy 9X on Pro. Receiver signal too low. Receiver signal critical.
First thing I'm going to check out is my 3-position switch.
Throttle enabled. Have a good flight. Stabilized. Throttle enabled. Have a good flight.
Okay, so that's auxiliary 5.
Your aircraft is now safe.
So let's head back on over to modes. And I'm going to actually share the arm switch along with my mode switch, because the airplane is only going to be basically 2 modes that I'm going to be using. It's going to be stabilized and pass-through, which turns off stabilization and takes direct input. So first of all, auxiliary 1, set, and if I move, oh, sorry, it's not auxiliary 1, it's auxiliary 5. There we go. So it's going to be on through 2nd and 3rd mode, and disarmed when it's all the way up. So now by default, stabilization mode is going to actually by default, stabilization is going to be on the plane. What we're going to want to do is actually input the option to turn that off. So if we go down and find pass-through, here it is, add this, and what this will do is this will disable the gyros. This will basically, the gyro and accelerometer feedback that the plane is using will turn off, and you'll get the full rough ride that you get out of the turbulence and everything else. Personally, I love stabilization. I know some people are yes, some people are no. If you set up your PIDs correctly and play with your PIDs until you get a smooth flight, stabilization is great. If you don't want to mess around with your PIDs, you don't want to go through any of that, pass-through is a great feature for that. So I'm going to set that to auxiliary 5 so that when I'm on center, so now I am armed and in pass-through, so this is direct mode. And this way I am armed and with flight stabilization. So I'm going to save that. Okay, now for the rest of this black box. You're probably going to want a switch for your black box. So let's head back to the configuration. Now I'm just using one of my other wing setup, like wing profiles that are on my transmitter. So let's go to receiver. Auxiliary 8 is on that switch, so I want that to be my black box. Let's head back on over to modes.
Throttle enabled. Have a good flight.
And I'm going to add auxiliary 8.
Heading home.
Oh, wrong switch. There it is. We hit save. Black box is on. Black box is off. Things like G-tune, failsafe. Oh, failsafe you can add to a switch. Now, originally, what I like to do is set up my trainer switch as kind of a holy crap switch. Basically, in the event that something's wrong, I flip that. It enables stabilization, not just stabilization, but enables angle mode. And then I would turn that mode on, save the failsafe feature to the receiver, and away I went, so that when that switch was on, everything else would zero out, and then all the modes would actually get set through that switch. And then beeper would get added as well. So, I mean, let's try that. I mean, the new failsafe is great. You can go in, once your throttle is set on the receiver and save to that, and then let's say your throttle dies, the system will go through and do all that anyway, where I used to just add it all through a channel. But we're going to set it up anyway. So first of all, let's head over to the receiver. Trainer switch is on auxiliary 2. Okay, so that's my holy crap switch. So let's head back on over to modes. So first of all, we don't want it armed, so we want that to turn off. Angle mode is the one we want. So we set that. We're going to want to use auxiliary 2. Make sure that that covers the range, and it does. So in the event of signal loss, auxiliary 2 will kick in. We'll save that. I'm not even going to worry about GPS hold. Beeper. We want to start beeping. Once again, make sure it's in that range, and it is. Save. I'm not going to worry about adding the failsafe feature. That's pretty much it. So we want it to go into angle mode, and we want to start beeping. Everything else will shut off because they'll all go back to the default values. And what should happen if your wing is tough enough, so if you're running a wing like let's say the Tech Sumo, for example, which can take a pretty decent accident. In fact, I once dropped this thing quite a few 100 meters out of the air. Somehow I was about a kilometer away from myself, lost reception, and wound up about 8 kilometers away. Now, it wasn't quite a flyaway. It was just a stabilized flight mode. It went into angle mode, and this way, it glided. So by the time it hit the ground, it didn't nosedive into the ground. It kept the nose up. Everything landed. It was okay. I drove around the concessions. It was quite a bit of distance away until I got radio signal. Popped on my goggles, typed in the latitude and longitude into my cell phone, and went to where it told me it would be, and there it was. So the failsafe is very good. You don't want it to basically crash your plane real hard into something. Gliding it down, even if you were to hit something, the chances are you won't do any damage, and you won't hurt anybody with it. So having a plane drop uncontrolled from the sky or having it glide down, you're better off just to have it glide, even if it glides outside of control. Like I said, have some way of tracking it. FPV is always great. You have a GPS on board, so you can just follow that. But that's pretty much it. That covers pretty much everything you'll need to know for a plane. So yeah, the last thing to do here is let's go in and test our settings and see if our settings are okay.
Okay, so I have my radio. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to test is the initial pitch. So I set that up to here. If I roll one way, see they roll back, I roll the other way, they roll forward. I usually like a little bit of up trim. So that's it. That sets my elevons exactly where I want them, and now let's test everything else. So pitch, I want to push forward, and hey, they go down, which will pitch it forward. So obviously if I pull back, they pitch up. Let's try roll. So if I roll, oh, that's it. Well, that doesn't happen all the time. Okay, and now the last part is in the bottom of the, I have that little servo there. Hey, well there you go. Okay, so that actually went quite well. If you liked the video and you found that it helped you, please like and subscribe. I will be doing another tutorial after this one. this is a Minim OSD, and I'm going to show you how you can set that up in standalone mode without a flight controller, so that you can still get your GPS, which will show you your latitude, longitude, your height, your ground speed. Also, it'll give you an arrow towards home, and that's all run through my flight camera, and all hooked up to this little micro video transmitter. Okay, so everybody, happy flying.